Hello, and welcome back to A Better World. This is your host, Mitchell J. Rabin, and we're very glad you're joining us again today. Today we're going to have another very interesting show. We're going to be speaking with a gentleman who is here from Australia named Jain, who has been spending his life devoted to the development of Vedic mathematics. It's a subject that probably many of you have not even heard of, but it is an ancient art, an ancient science, very creative, and it sort of maps the nature of the universe, the way that the Vedic folks have been doing anyway, through all their different means of meditation, the use of music, the use of tantra and yantra. So here, with the use of mathematics, Jain is teaching students, children really, from all over the world how to enjoy mathematics, how to relate to the idea of geometry and shape in a way that perhaps they've never done before, and make the entire enterprise of mathematics exciting, creative, enjoyable, and basically he is virtually breeding a new population of mathematical, if I may dare say, brilliant and maybe even geniuses. That's what Vedic mathematics brings to the fore. Among other subjects that Jain has been teaching around the world are sacred geometry and the way that relates, as well as other ancient mystical practices that figure into this domain. So we're very pleased to have Jain with us, and we're in for a very interesting show.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Good to see you.
You too.
So, first of all, just a quick word, if you would, Jain. How did you get into this in the first place?
In Australia, I grew up with my parents who'd come from Lebanon, and they started in the building trade of all things. So I worked every weekend of my life since the age of 5 years of age with a trowel in my hand. So I was a bricklayer. So I was actually measuring corners, like one brick here and
Angles.
yeah, angles, and I had to calculate volumes of concrete. But particularly when you're building a house, you have to get the four corners correct.
Yeah.
So you had to do mathematics where you had to know the size of the brick. Could be like 4 inches and half an inch cement, 4 half. So we had to make gauge rods. So at the end of the day, the four corners of the building had to be precise to the fraction of an inch. And if you had made a mistake, the whole building would be in error. So when we're out in the field, we're calculating all the time, how many tiles do I need? If it's 108 feet by 109, how many square foot tiles would I need? And without having to write it down, I worked out systems of mathematics where I could just work out the shortcut. So in my head, I could say 108 times 109 would be 109 plus the 8, which is 117. And then I would multiply the 8 and the 9, which is 72. So that's the answer, is 11772, 11,782, for example.
Oh, that's fabulous.
So within 1 second, I developed this art of mental calculation, which the ancient people had done thousands of years ago.
You later discovered.
I later discovered that it was all in print.
Isn't that interesting?
In a hidden volume that was written 50 years ago that got buried and unheard of for a long time.
Oh, what was that volume?
We have a book here. I have a book here called Vedic Mathematics. And so I'm actually traveling around the world currently right now, because I believe that the message of this master here, we have Bharati Krishna Tathaji, who died in 1960, but he came to Los Angeles in 1958 and New York, and he believed that the future of mathematics was in your head, that we did not need to write it down like we currently do.
Isn't that interesting?
And I believe I've spent 10 years of my life going through this material, recognizing that everything could be done mentally, but if we couldn't do it mentally, we could also do it in our head. We could also write it down as a one-line answer. So that was the puzzle with Vedic mathematics, that it's a mental one-line arithmetic based on
That's a bunch of one-liners, you could say.
One-liners, yeah. So it's called, the definition of Vedic mathematics is 16 universal formulas that are based on shape and pattern recognition, which solve every known mathematical problem that we know. So I spent the last 10 years trying to disprove it, And as I was setting out to disprove this claim, I fell in love with the system and realized it's definitely a universal system of pattern recognition.
Isn't that interesting? It ought to be said just on the personal note that your father also had a background in mathematics.
Yeah, my father
He had been
was
a math teacher.
Yeah, math teacher in Lebanon.
In Lebanon, right.
That's right. So, yeah, and my ancestry goes...
It could be that your genetics got mathematically configured.
It could be, yeah. I mean, I adore mathematics. I believe it's a star language. And one of the sadness in our culture today in this Western world is that most people are switched off from the joy of mathematics because they didn't have good teachers. They weren't taught the visual component very well.
Right.
In fact, I'm very disturbed. I found out that recently George Bush had passed in Congress this program called Leave No Child Behind, which means that they're punishing school teachers now. Oh no, they're actually punishing the school and the school teachers, that if the children don't do A, B, C, D, the school won't get funding. And what they're doing is that they're slowly taking out all the geometry, the visual component, and making it more algebraic, which means the kids are in this abstract world of mathematics. They don't relate to it. They're switching off. And what it means, this program means, is that there's no more free thinking, no more extracurricular material. So it's a race against time to challenge these laws that are coming through, because mathematics is really about joy and sharing.
Well, I think that will be a new idea for our audience, that mathematics is about joy. But it underscores like one of the fundamental pathologies in this country, and not just here, but elsewhere, that math is taught joylessly. There is no forging of the idea of joy with math at all. They're actually so entirely disparate notions. One of the pieces of work that you're bringing forward so gracefully here is bringing them together, I should say, again. So this is good. The other problem in what you're outlining, if I understand correctly, is that with just emphasis on algebra and those formulas, what they're doing is emphasizing the left hemispheric development at the expense of the right. And so you end up with lopsided children. Who are losing their creative, intuitive, gestaltic, spatial relationship to nature and to life.
That's right. Most children are very visual creatures. I admit that in some schools you have maybe 10-20% of children can do the left brain. They're very logical and they excel in the exams, but not most children are like that. So we fail as good meaning educators to give them that visual component.
Exactly. Tell me, of those 16 basic pattern recognitions that you described that Vedic mathematics is articulating, what are they referring to? I mean, are these the basic patterns, would you say, that underlie all nature and creation?
Yeah, Maharishi would be the greatest Maharishi Mahesh Yogi would be perhaps the greatest male mathematician on the planet right now, and he's saying that these 16 sutras or formulas are actually processes of the mind, the key components of the principles of how nature works. So for me to do these equations in my head, I need to understand certain formulas. Like I'll do one now, for example.
So are you saying that Maharishi Mahesh Yogi knows of, recognizes, and
he's a master of
promoting this understanding?
So when he came, most people know Maharishi as, say, the Beatles guru, but he's very humble. He didn't talk about his genius in mathematics because he grew up with a great knowledge of math, which is second nature to him. It only seems amazing to the Westerners like us who realize, oh my God, there is a better system, which is far more intelligent and sophisticated than the mathematics that we were doing when we worked down the page. Vedic math works across the, it's like a horizontal plateau that it works across in your mind. But now I believe it's actually a holographic field where we already know the answer. I'll demonstrate. Every child, the theme that I'm working with as I'm traveling around the world is that every teenager should know their teen numbers. Now the problem is we go to school and we rote learn like a robot up to our 12 times table. So 12 times 12 is 144. But if I said to you, what's 112 times 13? Suddenly you're in discomfort because you're out of your boundary.
Exactly.
So 12 times 13 means...
But there might be a way of doing it by segregating the 12 and the 13, multiply that, and then multiply something by 100. I would have to think that through.
A good mathematician could quickly work it out. There's many ways of doing it, but the way an Indian child would do it is that they would recognize that the base, I'm close to base
1,156?
No, it's close, very close, 156.
Okay.
Yeah. So 12 times 13 means that we're here to develop our inner mental screen. I'm looking at a point here. If you were to put skewers between your ears and between your eyes, there's a point right in the center called the pineal gland.
Sure.
And that's like a little screen. And when you close your eyes, actually you know that when you push against your eyes you can see after images. Well, they're recognized in the third eye. So what I'm doing is that I write 12 times 13 in my inner mental screen.
12, yeah, but you said 112 times 13.
Oh, right. Sorry,
So
I thought
I
we
was
said
right.
Yeah, you were right. That's right. Well, I'm starting off with the simpler one because we
Yes.
don't have a whiteboard.
Right.
So 12 times 13 would be, I raise the 2 and the 3 like a little flag in my mind's eye to recognize the 2 and the 3. I'm only going to think of the 2 and the 3. So I put the 2, I add the 2 to the 13, which is 15. And then I put a slash, I put a forward slash, so it's 15 something. And then I multiply the 2 and the 3, which is 6. So the answer in my third eye is 15,656.
Right, and then you add the 100, or multiply the 100.
So if I did...
and it just happens that the number relationships one to the other will give you, when you do the plus operation and then the multiple operation, it would give you the answer.
That's right. So it's a beautiful system. So I call it like supermarket mathematics. We're walking down the supermarket. There's 12 apples. I'm saving 13 cents on each one. How much will I save? $1.56.
Yes.
And it's very empowering. It increases your memory power, your confidence. And I believe you'll understand as a mathematician yourself that if we continue...
That's very kind of you,
if we continue,
go on, doctor.
You can visualize now that if we continue to use the calculator for 20 years, imagine you're a visionary. Could you imagine the global brain right now just deteriorating? And we pride ourselves as being an intelligent culture, but really I see it to our detriment that we're not embracing the best mathematical formulae.
Just that you mentioned the calculator, I must have been reading your mind or your mind, but I thought just then that the calculator is adding to the destruction of our society, and I use it all the time. I've seen it in my own self. I am now relying on a calculator to do mathematical arithmetic in a way that I never have before, and I would have done it in my brain in a second, but now I go, you know what, let me just do that. I see my own laziness having manifested. It's very upsetting, actually.
I'd like to demonstrate something. There's a calculator on the table over there. If I could get you to multiply a number, you know how I said Maharishi was the greatest mind, male mind? Well, there's a woman...
he still is.
He still is, but there's a female who came to America. Her name's Shankatala Devi. And I'm going to demonstrate what Shankatala Devi does. Is that she can take a 201 digit number from that wall to this wall and tell you what number multiplied 23 times gives this infinite number. And they competed against her in New York, in America actually, in Texas. So this was an experiment in Texas. And it took 1,000 instructions on the calculator, or the computer, the biggest computer on the planet, and 1,000 set of instructions. And she beat the computer, the biggest computer in the world, by giving the 23rd root of this 201 digit number within seconds. So I'm going to demonstrate that to show you that when you study these 15 formulas...
At least you're not going to ask me to do it.
Okay, what I want you to do is just take a number like 56. I want you to take a 2-digit number like 56 or 19 or 98, any 2 digits. Don't let me see what it is. And I just want you to go multiply 56, multiply, do it 3 times. You're cubing a number. Okay. So what you're going to do is then you go equal. So you get a number like that and you say, well, it's 6 digits. And I'll tell you the cube root. I'll tell you the number that you were typing in.
Okay.
Okay.
I understand.
So just select a number that I don't know. I'll look at the camera. So what we're doing here is that Mitch will be giving me a big number near 1 million, and I'm going to type those numbers in to my inner mental screen. And I'm demonstrating a sutra here called Vilakanam, which means by mere intuition or by mere observation. By merely putting these numbers into my third eye, I will actually see the cube root.
Okay. Now what should I tell you?
So
The final.
can you tell me how many digits in the answer? Like, is it 4,
6.
5? So there's a 6-digit number. Can you read them out slowly so I can type them in?
117649.
49. So whatever he said, I translated the numbers into a picture, which is what we're going to talk about in a minute. The picture
Please
language.
do.
So I don't even know what the number was. I merely transformed numbers into a picture, and I can see the answer within half a second, or let's say 1 second. So that's one of the 16 sutras called by mere intuition, where if we train the children in the future to do the mental calculation, because we believe that the brain is a mental muscle, and we've got to exercise it like any muscle. So if you give these children the ability to do their teen numbers and their 108 times 109, within a few years they'll be just becoming great mathematicians.
Well, the Indians are already at the top of the chart when it comes to computer programming,
Microsoft,
and virtually anything related to science and mathematics.
40% of Bill Gates' mathematicians are Vedic mathematicians.
Are they really Vedic?
Yeah. I know that they're from India, so I just assume they have some understanding of these formulas, these 16
Do you think that in school in India, this is something that is taught?
India right now is under a huge renaissance to reclaim Vedic mathematics, because do you know the story about Vipassana, how a family man from Burma revived the Buddhism? Someone called Goenkaji revived a 2,000-year-old lost system. Well, what happened was Vedic mathematics got lost due to the Islamic wars in the history of India, and it took 2 Englishmen now in England who started saying this system is amazing. They must have met the master who were talking about the Radha Krishna. So they revived it. Now India's gone all excited saying, hey, this is our system. We're shaking off the British curriculum here, and we're reclaiming Vedic math as our ancestral right. So India right now is offering a huge reward for the lost 16 books. That book I had here was one of 16 books. They all got lost. We suspect they're all in the Vatican right now. But basically India is very excited about shaking off our Western curriculum and teaching mental calculation. So you're going to hear more about it in the next year or 2.
So interesting. Now, I'm winding things to a certain point by asking this question, but I would like to know, how do you perceive the practical value of having a student have mastery over the 16 patterns beyond, let's say, doing a calculation in the supermarket?
What I believe that when you study the 16 sutras, your mind starts to change. I find that my day-to-day living...
That's what you found in yourself.
I find, for example, like right now we've got 2 cups here. I take a cup and I'm going to the kitchen, but the thing is, if I don't collect the other cup, I have to waste energy to come back to pick up this cup here. So I find that I become more efficient. As I start doing this elegant mathematics, it's clearing all the neural cobwebs of clutter. And as my mind's doing these incredible shortcuts, I find that I seek activities where it's the path of least resistance. It's a law of economy where I'm saving energy.
It's a form of ergonomics.
It translates from the mind down into the physical somehow.
I do that all the time, but I wouldn't have called myself a Vedic mathematician.
Because it's a natural process.
Yes, indeed.
It's natural.
Yes, it is.
And it's based on unity consciousness, because when I do my teen numbers, the 2 examples of multiplying...
Are those the up to 12 by 12?
Yeah, when I did 12 times 13 and 108 times 109, they're all based on bases like base 10, base 100, or base 1,000,000 or 1,000, but they all reduce to 1. So this system of relating to 10, 100, 1,000 is unity consciousness. That's why it works. We cannot find a better system than this. So the problem now in the school, you can appreciate, is that it means we have to rewrite all the books. I've worked at many times in many schools, and they shake my hand and they agree that this is a better system, but they're not prepared to make the change. So that's why we need to create our own schools. I don't believe we fight the system. Buckminster Fuller says we create a new system. We demonstrate to the world with our children, look, these children
something
are excellent.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm actually looking towards the enhancement of a Western mathematics, so we're not contradicting it. We're just saying, look, we can apply better principles here and let the children decide which system do they want to use.
Definitely. Oh,
so, but the main thing is
beautiful.
To just change the subject from Vedic math, but to come back to it. The reason how I got into Vedic mathematics was that I spent most of my life studying what we call magic squares. So this pattern that we have here is a picture, but it was based on 16 numbers called 4 squared. So imagine an ancient puzzle where here's 16 numbers, and the puzzle was to make everything add up to the same. And all the columns and rows and diagonals added up to 34. So on the back of this robe, this is actually like a poncho that I wear. I actually, in Australia, I'm a mathematician. I wear the lesson. So on the back of this, I've got the numbers, and they're going to create this pattern. So what I've been doing for 25 years is getting children to join 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to make elegant patterns. But these patterns that they draw are really nuclear physics. They're actually atomic art forms.
My God.
So at this point, I'd like to demonstrate. What brought me to America last year was that a colleague of mine, Roger Green in New York, invited me to an international feng shui conference in San Luis Obispo, California. And so I'm considered, and as you know, feng shui, a bit like Vastu, is all based on the ground floor, based on 9 chambers. So here's the magic square that most people are familiar with. But imagine if you could give the magic square to a child and they join 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, and when they tessellate this pattern, the children get a certain pattern. So I'll summarise my life's work in 2 minutes here. So imagine that we can translate.
You are becoming economical.
So here's a magic square here. There's the pattern from 1 to 2 to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I'm going to take one magic square pattern and tile it many times. Okay. So all my books are activity books for children, turning numbers into art.
Oh,
so then when we draw it 81 times, we have this elegant matrix, but really it's the atomic structure of diamond. What we're looking at is the atomic structure of diamond. So can you imagine that here's 10-year-old children drawing what we call mandalas, but they're really creating nuclear geometries. So what that does is that switches on the whole brain learning, the left and the right.
Right.
And the other thing that I do besides magic squares is that I look at the mathematics of nature.
Well, it's creating circuitry across the spheres.
That's right, very important. And this is the visual component of mathematics. If we can get a close-up of the pine cone, we see that nature, the living mathematics of nature, has an optimal preferred sequence of counter-rotating fields. Yeah, so Fibonacci numbers is my other passion. So if you look at this pine cone, you see that there's 8 white spirals going one way, clockwise, and 13 counterclockwise spirals. And the ratio of 8 to 13 is identical to the mathematics of where, if this is 8, this is 13. So the human canon is also a memory of this divine proportion. So the human body is an expression of nature, of DNA, of the cosmos. And my other passion too that I teach is to get children to learn multi-dimensional geometry. So we know that in two dimensions we have a circle. We all know that a circle is a 2-dimensional disc, and the 3-dimensional version of that is a sphere. So we know that a sphere is 3-dimensional. So the next important question is, well, what is a 4th-dimensional sphere? So here's a sphere that has imploded, rather than, you understand, like explosion going out. So here's an imploded sphere. And if you could visualize each one of these rings as a sphere, when many, many spheres are in one axis, when we add another axis to the dimension, we create the 4th dimension. So this is a 4th-dimensional sphere, and it's called the tube torus donut. And it's very exciting to a lot of scientists.
I saw Dan Winter bring this up many years ago.
Yes, because this is the mathematics of nature. Here we have a clockwise spiral from the top, and as this spiral crosses the equator, it becomes anti-clockwise. So suddenly we found a symbol that embraces all polarity, and it's called the tube torus donut. And this is part of your genetic memory. When you were one cell, when your father and mother came together in love, and expansion happened, a child was born. So it's the Trinity.
The zygote. The zygote. I remember it well.
So the binary code goes that you were 1, then 2, then 4, then 8. So when you were 4 spheres, when you were 4 spheres, you became, the 4 spheres pack as a tetrahedron. So there's 4 spheres. And then when the 4 divided into 8, you became 8 spheres. So the memory of 8 spheres is the 8 vertices of a cube.
That's right.
And
You're really saying that we're all a square.
we're still square. And after you became 16 cells, up to 512 cells, the geometry breaks down and you became this shape. So sacred geometry is the memory of shape, of which connects us to the atoms and the stars.
Oh, wow, what a story, what a story. Since you brought us back that far, I'm going to update us a little bit, at least to the Greeks. Just in our last minute, I understand from colleagues that pi, as calculated by the Greeks, is incorrect.
That's
is
right,
that
it's
so?
disharmonic pi.
Could you say a quick word about that?
Yes, the ancient yogis from India realized that the pi, the true value of pi, the exact value of pi, is not based on Archimedes' division of the circle into 196 polygons. That's the incorrect method because there's the area under the curve. So they thought if we keep dividing the circle into 1,000 to 1,000,000 little triangles, we would make up for the error. But they've increased the error. The true value of pi is 3.14644466, and that's the mathematics the frequency that will take you interdimensional. So there's very specific reasons why we have been kept in ignorance. But as the journey continues, we access the memory of all the truth. It's a journey to the center.
That will be, my dear friend Jain, for the next show.
Thank
or
you.
shows. That was beautiful.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was truly illuminating. This is Mitchell J. Rabin for A Better World. Thanks so much for joining us. I hope you're as illuminated now as I am and understand yourself as an original geometric shape, which you are. We'll see you all next week. Hello, and welcome back to A Better World. This is your host, Mitchell J. Rabin, and we're very glad you're joining us again today. Today we're going to have another very interesting show. We're going to be speaking with a gentleman who is here from Australia named Jain, who has been spending his life devoted to the development of Vedic mathematics. It's a subject that probably many of you have not even heard of, but it is an ancient art, an ancient science, very creative, and it sort of maps the nature of the universe, the way that the Vedic folks have been doing anyway, through all their different means of meditation, the use of music, the use of tantra and yantra. So here, with the use of mathematics, Jain is teaching students, children really, from all over the world how to enjoy mathematics, how to relate to the idea of geometry and shape in a way that perhaps they've never done before, and make the